is being deforested and destroyed, in part because of the development of the electric battery. Because near Borneo, on the archipelago of Sulawesi, you have, for I would say, you have huge reserves of nickel, which is one of the components to produce batteries, and the local people are not benefiting a lot of it. Their environment is being destroyed by the mining companies. Well, let's return to the present topic. I will base my presentation on this article that I've published in 2023, but most of the writing was done in 2022. As you know, to publish an article, you have to wait sometime for a long time before it is being reviewed and accepted. But I have tried to update part of what I have done in this article, and I will do it orally. But most of the approach and the figures were made back in 2022. But for the dependency estimate that I have made, it has not changed a lot. I believe I will check at the end of 2024 whether it has changed or not, but I don't believe that it has changed much. So let's try if I can move to the second slides. Let's see how it works. Yes. So in preliminary, I would like to state the importance of looking at electric batteries and the way they are made, their inclusion of a lot of different minerals, which are critical minerals, to make a case for the importance of this topic for both climate change and also the future of the energy transition, if it happens, and also our own personal future, because, you know, it depends a lot on what will happen regarding climate change and the environment. So batteries, as you know, are the core elements of many products, the electric vehicles, but also the renewable energies such as wind turbines or solar panels, which include a lot of minerals and critical minerals, but also their use in an electric grid depends a lot on the use of huge batteries because of the intermittency of the energy produced by renewable energy. It is necessary to store, at least provisionally, the energy produced in huge batteries. So the renewable energy also depends to some extent on batteries. And one of the one of the positive aspects on renewable energy is its capacity to be decentralized. And especially, I was talking about Borneo, for small communities living in remote areas which are not accessible or accessible at a huge cost by the infrastructure. Batteries and coupled with renewable energies are very useful because they can provide energy to local people without being linked to the national electric grid. So they can manage their production and use of energy locally, which is also is good for the democratization of societies. But batteries are also very important for data centers and the digital economy, which consumes a lot of energy and needs to store energy to be sure that there is a continuous supply of energy. You will find it in a lot of consumer electronics, such as our computers, mobile phones, and so forth. They are used in many consumer products now. And it is also very important for military weaponry They are present in all kinds of military equipment, and also there is an additional reason why batteries have a lot in common with weaponry. It's because they use the same set of minerals that are used for many weapons, such as missiles, for instance, or aircraft, military jets use a lot of these critical minerals. So there is a dual use of not only batteries but minerals for both civil and military use, which explains in part why these minerals have become critical at some point. Most of these batteries use a significant quantity of rare earth and other minerals which are not rare, but they may become scarce. There are most of them common, such as nickel, cobalt, manganese, phosphate, and other ones, copper, for instance, which are not considered rare earth. Nonetheless, they may become scarce with the advent of mass markets for the electric vehicles or other goods that use a lot of batteries. And their demand is growing with the rise of the electric car, of course, and the progress in energy transition towards net zero emission in 2050. If this objective is met, which probably won't be the case, let's face it, but even if it is not met as such, there will be, we can expect a significant increase in all these products that use a lot of minerals. I can't use. All right. According to the International Energy Agency, to hit net zero globally by 2050 would require 6 times more minerals in 2040 than today, which is a huge increase, which will have a lot of impact on many areas. To give just one example, with around 200 kilos, the EVs use 6 more times more minerals than the traditional combustion engine vehicle, which explain why each time the EV market grows, there is an impact on the production of these metals and their price. And it works both ways. Now, the EVs are the main industry that, for instance, consumes lithium. It has overtaken the share of mobile phones and computers these last years. So it is already impacting a lot this kind of mining industry. There are 2 main issues with these minerals, in particular if we compare them with oil and gas. The first is that there are not enough easily exploitable reserves for the energy transition and the advent of the EV mass market. That's what I showed in a previous article. You can use the US geology data or the British ones, and there are data provided by different countries. They show that the most easily accessible reserves of these minerals are not in huge quantities. For some of them, and I did the exercise in this previous article, after 50 years or 70 years, and for some only 1 century, which is not that much, most of the easily accessible reserves will be completely exploited. So for the future of the energy transition and the transformation that we need in terms of mobility. We cannot put all our eggs in this kind of basket because not only, as I will say, it has a huge negative impact on the environment, but it is not as such the solution to all the problems we face. But for the moment, it implies that there will be, because of this relative scarcity of minerals, there will be an increasing competition between global powers to secure access to them. And it is what I want to talk about today. It also implies this relative scarcity that there will be technical innovation to try to extract these minerals from other means, which will have a huge negative impact on the environment. For instance, there are projects to mine deep sea nodules in the Pacific Ocean, which will destroy the ground of these oceans. In rivers like the Rhine River, where there are a very tiny share of lithium in the water. So there is now a new technology which is called the direct extraction of lithium from water. It is supposed to be much less polluting and much using much less water because precisely it separates water from the minerals that they contain without using as much energy as today. I am not an engineer, so I cannot judge whether it is true or not, but I believe that there is a lot of exaggeration in this miraculous technology, which is not extensively used. I think there are only some pilot experiences that are being made. And there are also there is also the revival of the existing mines, for instance, in Europe, or the increased exploitation of the mines in Latin America, for instance, for lithium in particular. And there are new projects to develop new mines, not only in Europe, in Serbia, for instance, or in Portugal or Spain, or even one project in France. But there are projects all over the world, in particular in the US. And in the US, I have read that all the existing mines or potential mines of these minerals are located within less than 50 kilometers of Indian reserves, which means that they will be again impacted by the development of these mines, and we can expect that they will not benefit a lot from them. But for the moment, the local communities are resisting the development of these mines because they have a very negative impact on the environment. Some of them are near cities also, which implies a kind of return to the origin of capitalism, where cities were hugely impacted by coal, for instance, and other pollutions linked to mining, which explains that there is a kind of strong resistance of many people which are living in the neighborhood of these mines. So it is not only mining which is destructive, unfortunately. It is also the chemical industry which is linked to the refining of these minerals, which is very polluting, consumes a lot of energy and a lot of water, and rejects a lot of pollutants. For instance, I was talking about Sulawesi. Many of the mines are exploited by Chinese companies, and I don't want to blame the Chinese because they are always presented like the villains of the world. I'm not saying that Western mining companies are much better, but what they do in Sulawesi is that they just dump the waste, the mining waste, into the sea with no respect for the environment, the fishermen, and the impact on the water, the quality of the water, and they don't respect the Indonesian law, but even the Indonesian government does not put a lot of effort to enforce the Indonesian law. So it shows that the refining industry also is a huge problem in terms of environment. And we have other examples in the Altiplano in Latin America, which is a very arid area where there is a shortage of water. These lithium mining and refining, the way they do it, it consumes a lot of water which evaporates under the sun. So it shows that it does not go into the right direction. The second issue with this set of minerals is that contrary to oil and gas, they are not widely spread globally, but are concentrated in a more limited number of countries. So we know already the number of conflicts that has happened in the past related to oil and gas. We can imagine what could happen with a new set of minerals that are even more concentrated in a less number of countries. Potentially, there is the source of many conflicts and violence due to the access to these minerals. For instance, for lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, the world's top 3 producers control well over 3/4 of global output. In the case of phosphate, 5 countries control 85% of world production, but among them, Morocco alone control 70%. So this relative scarcity and geographical concentration make these minerals critical in the geopolitical sense. A compounding factor is that these minerals have, as I said, a dual use, both civilian and military, like oil and gas in a sense. And a third issue is that there is currently an imbalance between supply and demand. Although there are, of course, short-term fluctuations, for instance, because of the slump in the EV market these days, the price of most of these minerals is down. Nonetheless, there are huge fluctuations, a lot of volatility, and it is due not to a shortage of supply, but because the demand is down. So you can expect that if in the coming years the EV market rebounds, there will be again tension on prices and a huge increase in prices. So the volatility at the short term is a real issue because it makes these batteries more expensive. Another problem that explains also these fluctuations of the EV market and the batteries is the strategy that has been applied by the automakers. They are forced by at least the European law to invest and produce and sell a lot of EVs. Otherwise, they may be sanctioned next year, although there is negotiation between the EU Commission and the EU member countries and the companies to avoid these penalties for next year. But nonetheless, the automobile industry have decided to start the mass production of electric vehicles by selling expensive SUVs for the upper middle class and rich people, and this segment of the market is now fully exhausted in the sense that it amounts to around a third of the market, and these people have already bought their first EV model, and they will wait for some years before replacing them. And there is a lack of cheap, affordable electric vehicles, and they are only starting to come on the market. So in between, there is downturn in the electric vehicle that explain the difficulties to meet the target that was set by the EU Commission to talk about Europe. Yeah. All right. So there is nowadays a slowdown in the market that explains that the prices of critical minerals is rather low, but in the long term, the rise in demand will lead to a price increase of these minerals. And mining companies are very interested in this trend, and they are even deferring their investment to make sure that the rise in prices will happen, because this is one of their main interests, and they want to invest huge amounts in mining when they know for sure that there will be a market for this, because it takes around 16 years before the start of a project until the first ore is extracted and sold on the market. So they prefer to be sure that they have all the guarantees that whenever the metal will be on the market, it can be sold at a high enough price. So the mining companies are here, and they will invest a lot, not only in extracting the minerals from the earth, but also they refine it. So they have a dual interest in the energy transition. But nonetheless, they want to be sure that the market will be there. So after this will happen, there is a scenario that says that there will be a decline in material prices, and around the end of the 2030s, probably later if the targets are not met. And at that time also, the recycling of the spent batteries after the emergence of a mass market for the EVs will add a new source of supply of minerals for both the automobile industry and other industries. And this increase of supply is supposed to ease the tension on the market and make sure that there will be enough minerals available for all the industries that use them. If it happens for good, it will be not, as I said, before the end of the 2030s or the 2040s, but it also depends on many conditions. For instance, that the energy transition happens for real, and also that the EV market grows and becomes a mass market, so that enough mining companies invest and then increase the supply. It also depends on the recycling and the circular economy that is supposed to become real in the EU. And the EU has adopted a lot of directives to make sure that recycling becomes a reality. Nonetheless, even if it is true and if it happens, it will not happen in the short term because it needs huge investment in infrastructure to collect all the spent batteries and other products that use a lot of minerals. It also depends on a new technical innovation, which are not ready currently. And it also relies on a very important hypothesis. In capitalism, it needs to be profitable. If there is no profit to be made, there won't be investment by recycling companies. And for the moment, it is not sure that there will be a market for these companies, because it does not seem that for the moment it is very profitable. And what we know is that recycling of minerals is still a very small-scale activity, and the percentage of minerals that can be recycled is still very small. And to make sure that recycling and the circular economy becomes a reality, we need a change in all these areas. The infrastructure needs to be there. New technologies need to be developed to make sure that it is technically possible to recycle all the minerals that needs to be recycled, and then it has to be profitable. And in the EU context, it means also that local companies will be in competition with foreign companies, and there are already Korean companies that are ready to invest in the EU to compete with European companies in the recycling activity. And that may be the source of new tension between Europe and other countries. So these conditions have to be met, and for the moment they are still uncertain. So what is more certain is the reliance on mining companies and the extraction of new minerals from the earth or from the sea and rivers. So that explains that there is currently, as I said, a structural mismatch between supply and demand of critical minerals, which is reshaping the global production network in a global context, which is marked by the long-lasting consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and the disruption of global supply chains. We can still feel it in the maritime transport, for instance, plus the addition of new conflicts, such as in the Middle East, but also Ukraine, which have disrupted maritime transport, and increased a lot the cost of maritime transport. So this creates difficulties to, I would say, reorganize the global production networks and makes it more expensive and unstable. For instance, I'm still waiting for my container coming from Brunei Darussalam. It has been delayed many times because the ship has to go around Africa instead of going directly into the Red Sea. And I won't tell you about the increase in price about it. But nonetheless, because of this context, the primary source is still mining, and there is a global scramble for critical minerals and components that involves mining companies, battery and car makers. And this is what I call that the new global scramble, like there was one in the 19th century between colonial powers that scrambled for Africa to exploit in part the natural resources and minerals of Africa. So a lot of the aspects of these new products, these new technologies, even the digital economy, have a lot to do with, I would say, the original forms of imperialism, because you have the same kind of rush to have access to natural resources and exploit them for the benefit of companies that are not in Africa or in Asia. It's different, but at least in Southeast Asia or even in Latin America. I think that we can use the literature and the concept that were developed at the time, and it will apply at least in part for the present. According to Renault CEO Luca Di Meo, the persistent supply chain crisis means that the game has changed and that car makers have to play by new rules, by which he means that the car makers have to be more reliant on the efforts of energy and mining companies. So what I want to say is that within global production networks, there is a change in the relation of forces between global companies, and the mining companies and the trade companies of metals are increasing their bargaining power, and those who are using these natural resources have to change their behavior. And one thing that they do is that, for instance, car companies are investing directly into mining, which is in part new. If we just think about the recent past, but if we go to the past, to the end of the 19th century or the first part of the 20th century, we can find examples of companies which have in the past invested also in mining. For instance, Ford Motors has done it in the past in Latin America, in Brazil, or in other countries, and they had done it also in the US. They were producing the metals that they needed for the production of cars. So until recently, only battery makers and chemical companies were making investment in raw materials and mining companies, or buying shares in existing mining companies. And now you see new actors like car makers, which are doing it. For instance, Great Wall Motor, a Chinese car maker, invested in the Pilbara mine in Australia, along with a lot of Chinese mining companies. You have also joint ventures with refiners, for instance, Toyota and Orocobre in Japan, a chemical company. And you have also co-investment between car makers and battery makers, for instance, Volkswagen and Northvolt in Germany. So you have a new game, as Luca Di Meo said, within global production networks. And at the end, the game will decide who will have the power to control and impose prices to other actors. It is not sure that the car makers will be the winners. There may be other actors that may gain more control of the market. And plus you have for the electric vehicle new actors. You have mobile phone companies like Huawei, for instance, who have decided to produce their own cars. You have the same with other digital companies which want to do it. Google and Apple have huge projects for autonomous vehicles. So you have a complete reshuffle of the industry, and we will see in the future who will be the final winner. That is a lot of change with the previous decades, where externalization of non-core activities was the main strategy of many global companies. They wanted to focus on what they were doing the best and what was supposed to give them the power to control the whole value chain. So at a time in the 90s and year 2000, for instance, the automobile industry decided that they would be the architect of the vehicles. They would focus on the conception of new cars and the way they would be assembled, but they would externalize all the production of components to external suppliers that could be offshored to Asia, in particular to China. This is changing. This is changing by this movement from the end user to the the first steps of the value chain that explain that car makers are investing in mining, for instance. In a way, as I said, it is the return to the origin of imperialism when natural resources played the primary role. So this context of relative shortage is the source of dependencies of key industries, not only the automobile industry, but other industries, which are called a part of the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So automobile, defense, renewable energies, and the digital economy that includes a lot of different industries within. All these industries are highly intensive in the same set of minerals, which, because of their strategic importance and their very unequal geographic distribution, are now considered by the states and regions as critical minerals and a major geopolitical issue. So this criticality of minerals combines the economic importance and the supply risk due to the geographical concentration of supply. And the geopolitical stake is rooted in China's overwhelming dominance of almost all these minerals, with a few exceptions, amid growing rivalry and conflict, open conflict between China and the US, placing the EU in the embarrassing position of a helpless guardian of multilateralism. The EU may be the last one to believe in multilateralism and the capacity of the WTO to play any significant role, and also because of its internal division between EU member countries and between the companies of these countries. There is no, I would say, common strategy and reaction that would say what to do, even if it is a wrong strategy. Countries which are governed by one single government, like China or the US, they can take a decision and apply it and enforce it on private companies sometimes, which the EU is not able to do. So my article focuses on these new dependencies created by batteries. I estimate the concentration of minerals and battery components, because I said that geographical concentration is important, to better understand the potential vulnerability of the US and the EU. In this regard, there is a literature on the resilience and robustness of global production networks and their capacity to react to crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic or any other major disruption such as a war, at least a war that has a regional or global impact like the ones that we are witnessing today. And the lower the diversity of suppliers, the higher the risk of disruption if one of them is seriously hit by an economic shock or a political one. So I calculate a very simple index, which is the Herfindahl-Hirschman index, not only because it is simple, but because I like very much Hirschman, which is an interesting economist, which has a very uncommon life. He left Europe when the Nazi came to power, went to France where he became a resistant during the war, and then migrated to the US when he became one of the major economists of the American Economic Association. You would not believe that at the time there were heterodox economists in this dominating this association. If you look at what they do today and who is setting the rules now. Nonetheless, I think that this index is useful to have at least a first glance to the dependency on some countries on some product. There is a growing literature regarding this because of the COVID-19 pandemic, when many countries discovered that they were not able to produce not only vaccines but even basic medicines, like France, for instance, experienced it with a lot of basic medicines. There was, before this pandemic, a growing literature about it because of critical minerals, and there is now an ongoing one, whether it is necessary to reduce the dependency, to reshore at least some strategic production within the country, or the right answer is to increase the global reach of global production networks and diversify the supply of strategic components or minerals or products to decrease the dependency on a few countries or a few suppliers. So robustness is defined as avoiding any interruption in production or product delivery. Resilience is the capacity to resume delivery when an interruption occurs by switching towards a new supply sources. What we can say is that a high level of concentration of supply chain increases the necessity for all the companies involved in a global production network to be very robust, while a diversified GPN minimizes the effect of supplier failure thanks to high resilience. In a nutshell, the degree of concentration highlights the potential risk of disruption. So this is the Herfindahl-Hirschman index that you will find almost everywhere. One of the original use of this index is by the US, in particular in the enforcement of the anti-monopoly law. They want to be sure that no company has a monopoly power within the US or within an industry. The same in the EU. And usually a value of the index which is close to 0.3 or 0.4 is considered a high value that signals the necessity for the state to intervene and make sure that competition will remain. The European Union has recently considered that a value which is superior to 0.4 is excessive, and that below 0.4 it can be accepted. So what is interesting is that the inverse of this index gives the number of countries on which one country depends or a region depends, and for a value of the index around 0.4, it means that the EU or the USA depends on 2.4, around 2.4 countries, between 2 and 3 countries, because there is no such thing as 2.4 countries, but between 2 and 3 is considered the danger zone. So in my paper, as you have seen, I have calculated this index for the main minerals and the main chemical products that comes from the first transformation of these minerals, and also there is a second step when the minerals are transformed into a component that can be directly used by the battery makers. So I have highlighted all the values that are close or superior to 0.4 to see where the EU and the US had an excessive dependency on too few countries. So you can see in bold figures that, just to take one example, for lithium carbonates, the EU has a huge dependency, and also the US a bit less. For copper, the US a very high dependency on foreign countries, and a few foreign countries, 0.9. I have also done it for batteries themselves, which are called lithium-ion accumulators in the vocabulary of the UN Comtrade. So for the EU, the dependency is very high, 0.48, a bit less for the US, because the US imports more from Japan and Korea, and much less batteries from China directly, while the EU imports much more Chinese batteries directly from China to the EU. So I don't have time to detail the discussion of these results, but in synthesis, the EU and the USA are dependent on at least 6 of the 15 minerals, which reveal a higher level of risk. Plus, the EU is dependent, highly dependent on too few countries, mainly China, for the import of batteries. In a second table, I have provided the geographical origin of these few countries on which the US and the EU rely, to just highlight the role of China and Russia, which are 2 countries with which the EU and the US have some disagreement, to say the least. And at least for some of these imports, the 2 countries play a significant role, especially China, which over-dominates almost all the set of minerals, and inclusive the production of batteries themselves. So it shows that the 2 countries or region, the EU and the US, have a real problem of dependency, especially towards China, which for them is a problem, a political problem, and not only an economic problem. First, because China has already shown in the past that they are ready to use their strength in the production of these minerals for political objectives. So they were already in the past ban on export from China of part of the minerals to Japan, due to the conflict between China and Japan on the Senkaku Islands in 2010, which are the wake-up call for the US. And at the time, Hillary Clinton had decided that it was time for the US to react and have a policy about it. And China has used, again, export licenses or bans on export recently of graphite, which makes around 90% of the production of anodes in batteries. So without graphite, you just can't produce batteries at all. So, and this time China did it in reaction to the US ban on the export of technology, US technology to China. So it shows that this risk is not only potential, but there is a real reason, a serious reason to think that China can use its domination of the production of these minerals in the conflict that it has with the US, and maybe now in the coming years with the EU, due to the decision of the EU to increase tariffs on the import of Chinese EV in Europe. So in the remaining minutes that I have, because I have almost exhausted my time, I would like to talk more about the EU policy and the US policy. As to be as short as possible, both I will say countries, for the sake of brevity for the EU, both countries have waited for a long time before reacting for different reasons, probably. In the EU, it is, I would say, the blindness of the belief, the religious belief in the virtue of competition and the possibility to get access to all the minerals, natural resources that they think the Europe would need for its internal use, based on their privileged relations with Africa. So they signed a lot of trade agreements with Africa to make sure that there would be this uninterrupted supply of minerals. They tried to do the same with other countries and other regions, especially with Latin America. It did not work that well. There is still, as you know, discussion regarding the trade agreement between the EU and the Mercosur, for instance. And I would say, to make it short, because of the internal division between EU members and the EU economies, which have different interests, there is no, I would say, a unified position of the EU towards either the US or even China. Germany exports a lot of goods to China and does not want any retaliation of the Chinese governments that would undermine its interest in China. And they were the one who strongly opposed the tariffs on Chinese EVs recently. The Eastern European countries, such as Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, or other countries, Slovakia, for instance, have welcomed a lot of Chinese investment within their economy. Hungary is the country which is now producing a lot of batteries and EVs, in particular Chinese EVs. So they don't want to have any trouble with China, while France is more the supporter of European autonomy because it is more in the interest of their private companies, with the support of other countries like Italy or Spain, at least from time to time. So, and because of the very late awareness that this traditional position of the EU, the belief in the virtue of competition, the single market rules that also impose a lot of limits on the possibility to have an industrial policy, plus the difference of interest between the EU members and their companies, there was only very lately a reaction of the EU when the idea of strategic autonomy was discussed and approved. And they also decided to create new policies in the EU, copying the positive experience of the Airbus. They decided to establish what they call the Airbus of batteries, which is a public-private partnership trying to convince European companies to establish a European battery industry, using as much as possible local, European minerals. So there is a set of policies that is trying to establish this new industry within Europe. The problem is that they are doing it so late that the competitors are already there, not only China, but also Japanese or Korean, or maybe in the future American companies are able to compete with European companies. So there is a danger that the policy that the EU has adopted will benefit more these foreign competitors than the European companies. And you can see it clearly because most of the subsidies to the electric vehicles and also to the battery itself benefits the Asian batteries that are made by China or Japan or Korea, because the European car makers, due to the lack of European producers of batteries, they have no other choice than importing Asian batteries and putting them in their EVs. So all the subsidies to the EVs is an indirect subsidies to Asian batteries. So they decided recently to increase the tariffs on the direct import of EVs to try to at least protect the development of European electric vehicles, thinking that it would, in a second step, make room for European batteries when the European battery maker will be ready to mass produce, which is not sure to happen very shortly, because both the Swedish champion Northvolt and also French battery makers are struggling to produce at a large scale the batteries that they were supposed to produce. So there is delay. There are even industrial accidents that delay the production of these batteries. So it means that European car makers will stay dependent for a long time on Asian batteries, and there won't be a short-term solution. But before turning briefly to the US, I want to stress that the EU that was for such a long time unable to take any decision because of the strong rules of the single European market and the necessity to maintain competition before everything else, was able to relax part of its rules and not only increase protectionism, which is new to them, but even to relax state aid subsidies to local companies. That was first decided during the COVID times, but later they decided that in the event that European companies would invest outside of Europe, because, for instance, the US or other countries are offering better conditions, then EU members have now the right to increase their subsidies to companies, foreign or local companies, which is a breach to the single policy, the EU single policy, the single market policy, because until recently it was forbidden for a state to make direct subsidies to private companies, in particular to its local ones. So, and this argument has been repeated so many times during the previous decades to any opponents to this official policy that it is a really, I would say, bold decision of the EU Commission to make this change. And it was not thinkable at least some years ago. Now, regarding the US policy, as you know, the Biden administration had continued the first Trump presidency policy, which was the first one to take critical minerals seriously. I would say basically because of the lobbying of the defense industry in the US that say we are so dependent on Chinese minerals to produce our missiles and jets and many other weapons that we really need the federal administration to adopt a policy to decrease this dependency. Plus, I would say the Trump behavior towards China. It is the main enemy that needs to be addressed by the US. Trump was the first one to adopt 2 executive orders to start a US policy to develop the production and the supply of critical minerals to the US. What Biden has made is to continue this policy, but add the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is I would say the first comprehensive industrial policy in the US that goes beyond speeches and gives huge subsidies to not only US companies, but private companies that are located in the networks of friends of the US, so friendly countries, not only Mexico and Canada, but also other countries that are part of the geopolitical alliance of the US throughout the world. It is really a policy that has been adopted against China. And the main objective is to make sure that any electric vehicle which is sold in the US does not include Chinese components or have as less as possible Chinese components. To give you just one example, Indonesia has welcomed a lot of Chinese investment in mining in Indonesia. To produce minerals for batteries, and they wanted to export these batteries to the US, and even Korean car makers like Hyundai, they wanted to export cars to the US that included Chinese batteries made in Indonesia by Chinese companies and using minerals mined by Chinese mining companies. And the US Treasury, which is in charge of the IRA, say no, we refuse to give you the full benefit of the IRA because the cars that would be exported by Hyundai from Indonesia to the US would be too Chinese. There is a rule that reduced the Chinese content of electric vehicles that can be sold in the US with US subsidies. So now the real question is what will happen of this IRA now that Trump will become the next president. As you know, he has already announced that he would cut all subsidies to electric vehicles, and much to our surprise, maybe, he has the support of Elon Musk to do it. The reason, from what I have read, is that Musk is convinced that his company does not need any subsidy because all the models that he sells are expensive and can be bought by the upper middle class and rich people. So he does not need for the moment to sell cheap cars to blue-collar workers. So he's happy to see that if there is no more subsidies from the Trump administration, it will mainly affect its competitors and not himself. Plus, he has other interests outside of the automobile industry, as you know. So there will be probably, from what I've read, not a complete withdrawal of all the IRA measures that have been taken. Anything that is linked to the relocation on US territory of some strategic production, such as minerals, will be probably maintained because of the link with the defense industry. To finish with, I would say that the more, I would say, uncertain future is for the EU because the EU is taking more seriously than the US or at least Trump the energy transition. what will they do now that there is a new administration in the US that will be opposed strongly to the energy transition? And what will they do in the regarding China? It is not sure that the new Commission will maintain the same policy, although it seems that the new competition commissioner, the Spanish new commissioner, I just forgotten her name, I think Teresa Lima, if I'm not wrong. She has just been recently appointed, said that she would continue the relaxation of the state aid policy within the EU to make sure that the industrial policy within the EU will continue. But this is, again, highly uncertain. Sorry, I've been too long.